I think during COVID, everyone's got this used to this new beast called webinar. And you have webinars coming out of your ears. And there is a joke that is going around on internet which says that earlier you had four people talking to each other, thinking that 100 are listening. We used to call it delusional. Now we call it webinar. At the bottom of your screen, you can see there are 406 participants actually listening to what we are saying. Perhaps Scotch online events, because these are not webinars, these are serious summits, are the only ones where at 9 o'clock in the morning we can get people from across the country and perhaps the world in that large numbers. And not only they are there, they're listening, they're participating in polls, they're giving their feedback, and they're staying. The average time that a delegate spends online on a Scotch webinar is 2.5 hours. It's same as an Amitabh Bachchan film. So it is thanks to the speakers and thanks to the panelists and thanks to all the compelling content that comes together and the common purpose of nation building. Now, there is nothing more important that is happening around us today than a response to COVID. Now, it's like that proverbial, elephant, someone seeing the tail, somebody seeing the trunk. So if you look at economists, they would have a very economy-centric view of it. There is a sociological dimension to it. There is a governance dimension to it, and God would help us, there is now a huge political dimension to it. And everybody actually throws around performance numbers based on the criteria that they've kind of chosen. So like in his talk, Ajay mentioned that Bombay is performing very well in response to COVID. Now if you talk to Amirullah, he says actually Northeast is performing very well to COVID. If you talk to Shamika Ravi and Mudit Kapoor, they would say that Haryana and UP and Bihar are performing very well. And if you listen to government of India, union government, they're all praises for Haryana's response to COVID. So where is the truth? Because I think truth lies somewhere in between, because people tend to look at very macro level data. And that is where, what we do at Scotch is our approach is very different. We call for nominations. We look at individual interventions. We looked at, for example, how did Gurgaon respond to COVID? What were the three things that they did? What changed? So we would go down to a micro level and we would look at the outcomes, and we would also get citizens to participate, and did they actually receive these benefits? So there's a huge amount of research that goes, and out of these projects throws up which state has got the maximum impactful projects. And I think that probably is a very good barometer of what is actually happening on the ground. For an economic kind of a survey or a statistical kind of a result, I think it's just too soon. We are too early on in the thing. So what this conference does today is bring together some of these best practices that as of today in a time period are best practices, good responses that have happened, and we're going to be discussing around that. So we've got a fairly formidable panel. Since I mentioned Haryana, so let's start with, we have the pleasure of having ACS Haryana, Health in Haryana with us. Sir, your intervention on, how do you think Haryana has responded? And since you represent a state government, if you could also throw a light on, a lot of central initiatives that are taking place, like the National Digital Health Mission. A lot of directives are coming from the center. And given the fact that state health is a federal issue, what is the response at the state level? And, what is your state of readiness to roll out these initiatives? How far have you been guided by ICMR? How much have you used your own capacity, state capacity, so on and so forth? If you could throw some light on these as well, it would be fantastic.
Thank you very much. Although I think I had prepared along the question which you had thrown for the panel discussion, but anyway, I'll go back to that and respond to what you're asking. As far as Haryana is concerned, as you said, the government of India thinks we are doing well, and we also think that under the circumstances we have done well, because if you see before the pandemic, Haryana is not typically one of those states which come in the forefront of the health category, higher health category states of the country, like many of the southern states and all. But when it came to the pandemic, probably our response and our swiftness of response and the way our people behaved in the state during the entire process was far in excess of what we had also anticipated. We have a total of positive cases of about 1.5 lakh cases, where 92.41% recovery rate is there. So these are the figures. But the best thing is that as far as the fatality rate is concerned, that is 1.09%. And as far as the sampling is concerned, we have already crossed 1 lakh samples per million in Haryana. And in the NCR region, we have crossed 1.5 lakh samples per million in the NCR region. So the question is that whenever we talk about Haryana, and as Ajay also said right in the beginning, it's not only that the peaks in the different states are coming at different times, but the peaks intrastate state also are coming at the different times. So first of all, when Delhi was peaking, that is the time we learned a lot of lessons from what Delhi was lagging. And we found at that time that there is a tremendous stress which is there in Delhi on the healthcare services. And they were not able to respond to that. The beds were not available, things were not available, everything was in haywire. So we got about a month to plan how to go about in the NCR region. And that is the time when we perfected the home isolation policy in all the NCR districts of Haryana. And that is the time when we came out with elaborate guidelines of the home isolation system, put our mobile teams in position, put everything in position. Of course, this is the healthcare part of it. If we again go to the public health part of it, Haryana has been one of the states which today has already conducted 5 rounds of the door-to-door survey of all the households in the state, primarily to pick up the people who are having the ILI and SARI symptoms and those kind of things. And everywhere, whether it is a government health facility, a private health facility, the mobile teams which are there, wherever the teams are there, they all are having a flu clinics. So that is how we kind of went onto the surveillance part of it. The surveillance part is there, the tracking part is there, and then sampling. Of course, all of us know that when we started, the samples used to go to Pune, but today we have a sampling capacity of about 25,000 sampling per day in the state, 25 to 30,000 samples which you're able to do in the public sector. And this is the also matched by the lot of private labs which are there in Gurgaon and the other regions. So the sampling was there. The contact tracing has already been talked about, a great deal. I would say that we were able to utilize the technology very effectively in Haryana, apart from the physical contact tracing, by utilizing the CDRs of all the COVID patients who were there. Of course, following the entire IT Act, the provisions of IT Act regarding privacy, getting proper sanction for the putting the surveillance on the COVID positive patients' telephone, so that we are able to know that where all the person has been there and where all the contacts are located, primarily to enhance the contact tracing in these places. So I would say the surveillance part, the contact tracing part, the tracking part, and then of course very intensive sampling, whether by way of fixed sampling, by way of mobile sampling, by way of door-to-door sampling. And you talked about Gurgaon. Gurgaon is a place where in the initial stages we had a lot of problems, but then ultimately within a month or something, we were able to establish almost 35 sampling centers right around the city on the public sector. And without, apart from that, all the private labs were also there, which are providing the services. We are also.
Right, so I'll get back to you. I am using it like more like a panel discussion, so I'll come back with some follow-up.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. But then I just say one thing, that right from the beginning, our emphasis has been that identify as many cases as you can. Don't worry about the number of cases. Only worry about the thing that people don't reach a critical level, and people don't reach a level where they kind of don't get the care and they die. So the fatalities and the criticalities, these have been the things which have been stressed a great deal. Thank you.
I absolutely agree with you. You know, I think somehow the number of cases are being looked at as a verdict on the performance of governance in a lot of states, which is far from true. It's a verdict on the performance of the people, not the performance of the. If you don't wear your mask, if you don't do social distances, if you go for parties, if you go for religious functions and so on and so forth, and then expect nothing to happen, you can hardly blame the government for that. And within that, I think the role of community policing and awareness is extremely important. And we have Mr. Prateek Philip, Director General of Police, Government of Tamil Nadu with us. Mr. Philip, you've been doing an excellent job of community policing. So how have you been able to harness the community around response to COVID? And also, have you been able to use community policing and friends of police in your state to ensure that there is a higher degree of sensitivity and there is a nudge behavior that kind of takes place towards citizens' responsibility towards COVID?
Good morning, Dr. Sabir. Am I clear?
Yes, you are very clear.
Yeah. Right from the first lockdown, that is March 24th, I found that since there was a total lockdown and that the people who are marginalized were affected in terms of not having any means of income. So we decided to go the extra mile. And Friends of Police, which is an organization that I started in '93, came in handy because I, being part of the police, and Friends of Police having been working with the police in all kinds of scenarios, including disaster, there would be no prohibition of the volunteers participating in reaching aid, relief to the needy people, even in containment zones. And therefore, we were able to distribute every day hundreds of relief bundles, which consisted of 10 essential food items, raw materials like rice, grain, some essential vegetables and condiments. And these were made into bundles and sent out to the needy all across the city of Chennai. And since we have branches of Friends of Police in all the district, they too emulated this. And we had various organizations who themselves could not reach the people. And they found that Friends of Police had their access. They started supporting us either in cash donations or in kind. And that way we were able to reach out to the masses across the state. And this led to an emulation of this in other cities. And in fact, Friends of Police was able to reach relief even to the needy in Bihar to a few people, as well as a few people in Mumbai, the Dharavi slums, and so on. So the ripple effects spread across the country, and there was a replication of this effort of involving the community. So the chief resource for the police or for the government anywhere is the community. And community policing galvanizes volunteers and act as a bridge between the government and the NGOs and the people. So we were quite happy that we were able to actually meet the need. And this is in addition, of course, to the police spearheading the efforts to create social distancing, enforcing protocols, and police across the country, not just in Tamil Nadu, rose to the occasion. And they showed their humane face. And so much so, it even evoked the appreciation of the Honorable Prime Minister of India, that it brought tears to his eyes when he saw policemen feeding the poor. So we were able to actually use community policing all over the state, and it also had echoes in all parts of the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We also have with us on this panel Mr. Gudisa Pala Raju, Deputy Inspector General of Police, Andhra Pradesh. Mr. Raju, you know, policing in the best of times is a very difficult job in India. And you've been in Andhra Pradesh, you know, trying to make police, like you have this police seva kind of an initiative. So I believe you have more than 60 plus services of the police that is available online. So how useful was that in responding to COVID, and did it help you maintain the law and order to your satisfaction or better than, let's say, others because you had digitalized so much?
Yes, sir. Sir, good morning, sir. Basically, we were used to do law and order curfews all the way. Throughout the history, police are used to enforce law and order curfews. But this is a pandemic that is coming in a lifetime. Police don't have any SOP to tackle this kind of pandemic, and they never used to have any SOP for Janata type of curfew, where law and order is not involved. It is only public health and well-being of citizens. In these cases, sir, basically police station, police services, whatever police services are there, they cannot stop. We have to deliver services to them. So first batch of foreign returns came to Andhra Pradesh, sir. Then we have to isolate them, contain them. Then we have to contain the spread of COVID, sir. We had 22,000 of them landed in AP. So with the technology, use of technology, GPS and cellular technology, we have developed a home quarantine app, and we have implemented this. For 22,000 of them, we have contained them in their houses, and we have a village secretariat system where for every 50 houses, there is one volunteer. So physically, he used to ensure that they are not coming out for any, they are isolated fully. And through GPS technology, we used to monitor. And with that, we had only 25 cases in initial stages from these 22,000 foreign returns. Then there was another wave coming from Marcus, Delhi. We had 833 persons returned from Delhi to Andhra Pradesh. Then we had to contain them, and we have to stop the spread of the corona. So again, they were also quarantined. We have used the same technology. Then about police services, people are coming to police stations because they have their own grievances. So they used to come to police station, and there was a risk. Altogether, we had till date, we are having 13,000 policemen got affected, and 101 of them lost their lives in the fight of COVID as COVID front warriors. So without coming to police station, we have offered citizens 87 services through Police AP Seva app. And for women's safety, we have designed the Disha mobile application so that they need not come to police station. For all their services, they can simply sit in the house, and they can avail the services. So with this, now we have 658,000. We had 658,000 cases of positive, and we have positivity rate of 3.18, and fatality rate is 0.86. So maximum testing was done, then isolation, then enforcement of mask or social distancing through education, skits, dramas, using social media platform. All that, today at least we are happy that the positivity rate from 15% to 3.46%, and the fatality rate is 0.86%, sir. That's how technology was in handy for police, sir. At the same time, a lot of behavioral changes, a lot of attitudinal changes were imbibed in police to tackle the COVID-19, sir. Good day, sir.
Well, thank you very much. We have Mr. Rajan Sehgal, who's Chairman and Managing Director of National Handicap Finance Development Corporation. And as we all know, that economy has undergone a massive contractions impacted all of us. I am certain that people who have disabilities are impacted to even a much higher degree than us. So, what has been your response, Mr. Sehgal? And how do you feel they've been?
Good morning, Mr. Samir. Thanks
Good
a lot
morning.
for giving me this opportunity, and I must appreciate the entire Scotch Group for organizing the things in such a nice way in times of COVID, everything online. Our effort, since the mandate of my organization has not been in a very big way in the field of the health or the policing, but our effort has been to at least ensure that for our stakeholders, the life goes on to the extent possible in a normal way. Because otherwise also my stakeholder group, the disabled people in the country, are the, I'll say, most suffering, most needy part of our society. So basically, since my organization is mostly into the financing, concessional financing, despite COVID being in place and uncertainty around us, we never stopped our lines of funding. From March onwards, in fact, we ramped up our funding. We went whole hog into microfinancing part of our funding, so as to reach with 10, 20, 30,000 small bits of loans across country. And we're very happy to share with you that I think since March, since times of COVID, we have been able to distribute around 75 CR spread across 10,000 beneficiaries across, I think, 19 states and UTs by way of concessional loans. Apart from that, we have been doing.
If you were to compare it with, pre-COVID, similar kind of a time period, has it gone up, gone down?
In fact, my microfinancing came in that actually we have not been microfinance lending institution all through. We have been preparing for that. And onset of COVID somehow coincided with our preparation to launch the microfinancing also in a big way. So basically, out of this 75 CR, around 30 CR went from microfinancing, which was through microfinance institutions, mostly in Andhra and Telangana. And that was a totally new thing for us. And it has benefited around 6,000 to 7,000 people out there.
That's
Apart from that, pardon?
I said that's absolutely wonderful.
Apart from that, but it carries a risk. Who knows, after 3-4 years, they say that CMD has thrown away the money which has gone bad. Apart from that, we have been doing skilling for the disabled people in the country. And we immediately shifted our gears to online setup of the skilling so that the people remain busy during times of this corona also. And in fact, our model, which is also one of the contenders for some kind of award from your side, from the group side, basically it came very handy. We have our own skilling centers owned by disabled people, where the trainings are being organized by us through our set of trainers. So basically, we immediately shifted gears to the online. Sitting here in Delhi, my trainer is now teaching. In fact, this has become a major innovation for us now, that rather than trying to hire trainers for each and every place, now I'm able to organize it for 1,000 people, one set of, say, retail sales training sitting from the Delhi. And in the end, maybe once this corona thing is over and the country starts opening out, maybe that time the last stage of the practical training will be given to the in the centers where these trainings are attached. In fact, in this process,
I'll now move on to Mr. G.V. Panda. You've been waiting to ask a question, and for the host, Deepak, we have to keep running these live polls. So I just want to tell you that periodically there will be some poll questions, some voting on the projects, some on the content of the conference. Please participate as the pop-up appears. We'll try to warn you, but one way that we like to ensure attentiveness of participants is springing surprises at them when they think that they can, they're not listening or something, just suddenly the poll will open. So be attentive and do vote, because it's very important to award and recognize the projects that are all being represented here. Mr. Panda, are you there? You wanted to ask a question?
Mr. Panda, please
Okay.
unmute yourself.
Okay. So,
No, he's there.
is there? Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah, this is regarding our ability to maximize the various healing systems, Unani, Ayurvedic, allopathic, homeopathic, all this. And these systems are in a different pedestal because they don't get equitable prominence in any system of healing. So how do we gear them, strengthen them, depending upon their capacity and specialization, especially towards the time when the COVID is there? And we know that many of these systems are very active at the micro level, and we have a personal working for them. So how do we maximize these systems in a more effective way and have a better reach out and have a better counseling from them?
Okay, I got that. So perhaps that is an opportune question to bring me back to Mr. Rajiv Arora. Arora Saab, has traditional medicine played any role in Haryana? And if you largely like to address what Mr. Panda has said, Mr. Panda, of course, is an anthropologist. So his questions are always very interesting. And from my side, I would also like to ask you, so, what was one single key challenge that you faced? And how are you working towards building state capacity? Because, in best of circumstances in government system in India, we are struggling to maintain status quo, and then you suddenly have this disaster. So how do you ramp up capacity that fast? Bhushan, Mr. Arora there?
Mr. Arora is there, but we can't hear him. Mr. Arora, your voice, you are not audible.
Hello.
Yes,
Yes,
we can.
sir.
Yeah. Hello. Am I audible now?
Yes, yes, please.
Yeah. So, first of all, responding to the question on the alternate systems of medicine, so I would say that we have a fairly well-established Ayush department in the state government. But I'll also be very candid to admit that as far as the cure part of Ayush is concerned, that is not something which has been tried too much during the part of this COVID, because as far as the cure or the healing part is concerned, even the system of the allopathic medicine, that was also not giving a very firm kind of answers about how to go about it. But I would say that in our state, we utilized to a very great extent the immunity boosting parameters of the Ayurvedic medicine, and of course the spread of yoga through pranayam and all, to improve the respiratory systems of the people. So what we had done is that we spent a lot of money from the state government funds, and we spent a lot of money from the CM COVID Care Relief Fund to provide the the immunity boosting Ayush kits to all the people who were tested positive, number one, and to all the people who were there in the containment zones. So I think that was very, very well taken. And I would say that if after the pandemic, a study is conducted on the utility and the consumption of the Ayurvedic medicines and the alternate systems of medicine, you will find that there has been almost 7 to 800% increase in the sale of these medicines, and also because people relied to a great extent on the immunity boosting parameters of many of these Ayurvedic medicines. Similarly, wherever we had the district COVID care centers, or wherever the people with positive symptoms or even the quarantine people were put, we specifically put a lot of yoga coaches there who were giving them the yoga classes, especially pertaining to pranayam and all, to kind of ramp up their respiratory system. There were protocols which were designed by the Shri Krishna Ayurvedic University in Kurukshetra to also cure the patients who were COVID positive, but we limited it primarily to those who were having asymptomatic COVID and not the ones which are having very high symptoms. So to that extent, if you say the curative part pertaining to people who are having high symptoms or high infection rates, that was not tested during this time, but it was tested on the asymptomatic people and as immunity boosting medicines to people who are in quarantine, who are in containment zones, and who are in the district COVID care centers. That is the first part of it, what Mr. Panda asked. The second part, which you asked about, what is one thing you said that we should be able to kind of ramp up? Of course, during this pandemic side, we were able to mobilize to an unprecedented degree the district administration, all departments, as your panel discussion also shows, that I think there are more police people who are sitting here from the government side. So which means that all sections of the administration, apart from the public health and the health administration, they were all kind of collectively involved in meeting the challenge of the COVID, whether it is the police department or it is the local bodies department which deals with the municipal committees and corporations, or it is a department which deals with the gram panchayats and dealing in the rural areas. So all of them were mobilized to a very high degree. But we also know that as far as this kind of mobilization is concerned, it's almost a kind of once in a lifetime kind of thing, or probably for a very short time when you're having a pulse polio campaign or some campaign like this. But to have it on a very sustained basis is not either feasible or possible, because ultimately every department has their own mandate. So coming back to what you're saying is that ultimately what we need is we have to have a very, very strong public health cadre in the state health departments, number one. And number two, we have to have the tertiary care facilities in the private sector as well as in the government sector, going to the smaller towns and the smaller places also. Because as of today, we find that wherever we had people who were reaching critical levels, when they were able to reach the hospitals located in Gurgaon, Faridabad, all those big places, of course, the mortality rate was far less if they reached in time. But generally speaking, the tertiary facilities at the smaller towns, the Mufassal towns and the other towns, they are that leaves far to be desired than what they are actually today. So the private sector has to ramp them up, the public sector has to ramp them up, and the government on its part has to ramp up the public health professionals cadre for all times to come, because ultimately I think these are the kind of things which are going to be on a very recurring basis with all this the air quality decreasing in NCR on a regular basis and all those things. They are going to contribute to a lot of these kind of diseases. Thank you.
Thanks for the response. That there are two audience questions that we have which may be relevant to you.
Yeah.
One is from State Nodal Cell Health and Family Welfare Department. I do not know which state this is, but it should be some state. They're saying, how are the hospitals going to sustain and pay to doctors and paramedics, because the NHA and PMGI rates are very, very low. And this is something that we've heard very often. The second thing is VMMC and subdivision hospital are asking that health budgeting has to increase to get basics in place. Pandemic is something which will require more. So how much more money have you provisioned for all of this? And these insurance rates are terrible. I mean, how do you take care of that?
I'll reply to that. Now, as far as our state is concerned, we have taken care of all the patients who were tested positive. In fact, the entire public health system has been financing, right from the sampling to the quarantining to the isolation to the admissions of patients in the hospitals from the funds which are there with the state government. Now, where did the funds come from? We did get some funds from the government of India on a 100% grant basis, which were the World Bank funds. Number two, we got funds from the Disaster Relief Authority also, which are 75-25% funded. The third part is the funds which we have received from the CM COVID Care Relief Fund. And the fourth part is whatever our normal state budget funds or the NHM funds are available. When it comes to the salary part of it, I would say that in Haryana, we have standardized the salary of 3 types of doctors who are there. Earlier, there used to be a lot of slabs which are there. And in this particular pandemic, what we did was that for a medical officer on contract basis, we set 50,000 per month. For a medical officer with a diploma, he's getting 80,000 per month. And for a medical specialist or a young boy who's there, boy or girl who's there, we are giving 1 lakh rupees per month. So we were able to, in fact, and secondly, whatever vacant positions were there in Haryana government in the health department, we were able to fill about 1,000 vacancies of doctors in the month of February and March. And they were also immediately injected into the system. So I would say that as far as the doctors are concerned, it's not the question of availability of the medical officers. It is, of course, the difficulty in the availability of the specialist which is there. And secondly, what is happening is that many of the people who are primarily coming to the medical field, I think arguably in their favor also, I would say that many of them, they want to be near the bigger cities because of the quality of life and the other things which they want to have. So which leaves the people who are primarily there in actual rural areas and which are not very easily affected or not well connected. Those are the places which ultimately bear the brunt. So we have to kind of see that how in those particular places, whether it is the teleconsultation or it is the mobile teams or it is the other systems, how we are able to strengthen them so that those people are also able to get the consultations in time whenever such need arises.
Well, thank you very much, Shefali Dash. Dr. Shefali Dash, who was Director General NIC, and she's been a distinguished fellow with us for several years now and part of the evaluation team. Shefali ji, your comments, and to what extent do you think digital technologies are being used based on what you've seen during the evaluation, and is this the optimum usage?
Well, if Shefali is not there to answer, I would say that as far as we are concerned.
Shefali ji, are you there? Okay. Then
so I just say quickly that during this time, now I had one IAS officer, Ashok Meena, who's also the Chief Executive Officer of my Ayushman Bharat, who's an IIT graduate from IIT Bombay. So I kind of designated him as the Chief Data Scientist for the entire COVID thing. And I think all kinds of permutations and combinations of all kinds of reporting which I wanted. So what Ajay Shah talked about, the statistical backbone, which was not very strong in the health department, we were able to develop in these 4, 5, 6 months. That also shows that sometimes the crisis brings out the best in people. And similarly, I have my MD NHM, Sardar Prabhjot Singh, again an engineer, and both of them kind of put together a system where we use technology extensively, use statistics extensively, and to the extent possible, try to take it to the lowest level. Of course, that's a business, that's still a work in progress. To take it to the lowest level, where even the ASHA workers, they have been given the smart phones, and they are the ones who are working on the smartphones, even for the COVID. Hitherto, they were working only for the mother and child related programs, but now for the COVID programs also, they are working on their on smartphones and everything.
I must admit that, I have seen some fantastic digital responses from Haryana, and, some of them actually perhaps go under the radar. I don't know whether your department was responsible for it or not, but one of the finest GIS-based responses I've seen is from Haryana.
Yeah, that's our department only, yeah. So that's part of my presentation also. So with the HARSEC is our Haryana State Science Satellite Application Center. So we plotted each and every district with respect to the existence of the infection areas. And we were able to see exactly on a fortnightly basis how the infection is moving from one part to another. It's increasing, decreasing, concentration. So all kinds of geo maps were developed that.
Particularly, I find that I can actually on a map zero down to my A block Sushantok, and I know which all houses have infection and
definitely.
Which is in quarantine, which is a different color code. So it's so extremely useful.
Yeah, so GMDA, the Gurgaon Development Authority, so that is the one where we have a full set, which is a lot of people are sitting there who are collaborating with HARSEC, and of course my chief data scientist and the MD NHM. So that is the team which is doing this entire work of putting up the maps on telling how the infection is exactly moving on a weekly or a fortnightly basis.
Well, I would strongly recommend, some of these projects has not got nominated. I wonder why.
I think
So maybe we could correct that.
yeah. So maybe
Yeah,
then
actually,
we can put it now also.
Yes, the next law.
yeah, we do have a lot of data thanks to mobile phone proliferation and data capture, all the mechanism. But what I think we still do not have much is that we do have ground data at the primary level. The analysis which is happening now is either making a query or them. What we need to do now is uh, making it to the second smart level or third level, so that the data can be analyzed to give you some findings. Not just saying that this is the area which is covered, this is the area affected, red light, all that. No, we, for example, we can find out the where the number of positive cases are happening. Why? Comparing to the demographic of the people, like which type of locality is being affected more. Those kind of research still not happening. Maybe this is too early to do so, but that can give shed more light on this. That's what I just wanted to say. We have the primary level of data, but analysis is not happening the way, I mean, it can happen. I'm not saying it is not happening as such, but probably time is not enough, or maybe the focus is somewhere else. We need to do a lot of research and lot of data. The results can come up. The analysis will give us more insight to the spread and stopping of the spread of the pandemic.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me also invite Mr. Surinder Singh Sood, former advisor Niti Aayog, who has also been a part of the evaluation, to share his perspective on how he finds government responding.
Sir, we are having discussion since March, April on this COVID, and what I have seen is that a lot of efforts are being done by central government, state government, private players, and we also had during lockdown on platform the discussion with district magistrates and how the things are moving and how the private players are also helping to the state government and central government to address this problem. And during discussion today also, we have seen that, as mentioned by Mr. Ajay Shah, that data is very important, because whatever is happening today, and if we could have a standard operating system or the database, we could to have responded very fast. So what I think is that a lot of data is being generated by the states, and there should be a connection between state center, starting from the district, and then we should try to reach at international level as well, so that our policies should be inclined towards addressing this problem on a longer basis. So it's a unique case in itself that such a large mishappening has happened world over, and the countries are struggling very hard. So, and the second thing I think is where the artificial intelligence has gone. If we are not being able to use artificial intelligence to address this problem in a very faster way, so then we should think about it and try to assimilate artificial intelligence with the database which is being generated by the states, and this database should also have been uniform in nature. So the focus should be very well on database and the report generation and consistency. So I think our whatever, like in we today we had good examples from Haryana state that a lot of work is being done to even to pinpoint where the people are suffering. So if these things can be coordinated with other states at and then merged at central level, so that the better policies could be made in near future. That I want.
Thank you very much. We also have a comment from Avasthi Das to the Aswati Das to the panelists. How do you tackle the problem of reporting of quarantine people at home? So suppose somebody at home gets symptomatic, then what do you do? So maybe we could have a response on this from two sides. One is from the policing side. So Mr. Raju, is your application taking care of it, or is there any police mechanism available for informing somebody's got home quarantine, and then we can also look at, what is the government system that takes care of it. Gulshan, do we have Mr. Raju?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Pardon, sir.
Yeah.
So, this home quarantine app, sir, basically, it is geo-fenced app, sir. It is downloaded in mobile iOS and Android phones, sir. Once he comes out of the house within 30 meters of his residence, the alert is generated, sir. Immediately, that ward volunteer or this Grama volunteer who is responsible for 50 houses in that village, he will immediately check up, sir. At the same time, sir, DOPT was kind enough to run back-end analysis, and they used to give alerts also, sir, based on their geolocations, and we used to get them, and we used to keep cases against them, sir. First few days, there were a lot of violations from foreign returns. Then system got stabilized, and we could contain them, and the cases for 22,000 of them, cases were only 11, sir. And secondary was 25, sir. A total of 34 cases, positive cases, we could limit 34 to that number, sir. Good day, sir.
Okay. And Dr. Prateep Philip, what if you would like to respond to this, and also if there are any additional protocols that police has put in place to prevent COVID in your state?
Thank you, Dr. Samir, again. In the CBCID, which I'm now heading, I took charge a little midway through the pandemic in this CBCID of Tamil Nadu. And from day one, I put an officer in charge of monitoring the condition of people who contract COVID-19 within my, say, 500 to 600 strong community of CBCID officers, men and administrative staff as an experiment, and also to check their welfare. So from the beginning, I said you follow these protocols of social distancing and also wearing masks, and two precautions to build your immunity. Take the pharma products like vitamin D, vitamin C, and all the other pharma products, and also the Indian Ayurvedic immunity boosters, including a drink, Ayurvedic drink, which the state government, made it very popular by the Chief Minister himself, endorsing its utility, that we are all taking it on a daily basis. And in addition to this, if the government makes the protocol that that immunity boosters should be taken on a regular basis, and third, that like in Wuhan, if every individual also takes inhalation, steam inhalation on a daily basis, at least once, that prevents the virus from lodging in the nasal passages and then traveling to the lungs, which the lungs are the main cause of fatality. So if this sharing is done with the help of the entire social media and our official media, we can further bring down the already low, the fatality rate in India. So this can be included as a protocol, and probably this webinar can be the cause for that.
Yeah,
in China,
we take a note of that, and we would certainly put it as a part of our recommendations. Nirmal Bansal is with us, who's also Distinguished Fellow at Spark Foundation, being possibly the longest serving jury member that we have, and his insights are always refreshing. So Nirmal, you wanted to say something? Is Nirmal around?
Nirmal was there a little while ago. So I think
while someone locates him, there is a comment from Gajanan Sakhare saying that how can we collaborate with the teams for helping with data analytics? We can bring in industry experience. So, Mr. Sakharia, what I would suggest is that why don't you send us a mail and we could circulate with your capacity set, and we could possibly circulate it to all the panelists that may have use. Gurshan, are you calling Nirmal?
Yeah, I am. So in the meanwhile, we have a poll up for the panel.
Discussing the panel discussion itself. So in the meanwhile, let me bring back Mr. Rajan Sehgal. So Mr. Sehgal, is there a target driven kind of an approach to this microfinance? You said you've given away 75 crores. So is there a target or is a corpus? I mean, how are you going about doing it, or you are doing it demand based?
No. This we do fix targets, and in general, we are trying to upgrade every year by around 15 to 20% of our disbursement every year. My current year target is around 150 CR, of which, as I indicated, we have reached, I think, around 50-60 CR till date. So we'll be.
How much are you publicizing this? Are people aware that such a facility is available?
Actually, basically, we are the refinancers. We work through state agencies. We work through public sector banks. We work through RRBs, and at the same time, we are also trying to develop some level of direct lending also from corporation itself, which is more or less based on the online model. But the major lending is through our state agencies and the banks.
Thanks.
We are also trying new innovation which we are trying to do is we are also trying to chip in into National Livelihood Mission, because what happens is in these livelihood missions there is a last stage last mile financing which happens to public sector banks, and then the banks go to the government to get the interest subvention. Since my rate of interest is so low, there will be no need for any interest subvention from my organization. So I am trying to chip in. I am trying to replace some of the banks in some of the livelihood missions across different states.
There is a comment by Tanmoy Sarkar. I understand the importance of data, which upon dispassionate analysis would throw light in sight of transmission disease in certain population. When data is such a powerful tool, fear is that there may be, no, the poll is covering my question. So, yeah. So it says it might be biased. My question is, can data be collected neutrally without any influence? Probably we can have Mr. Rajiv Arora handle this. Do you find any biases in data collected, and do you think there's a neutrality issue?
No, I don't personally feel that as far as this COVID data is concerned, there are too many biases in this. I think the data which we collected, I would say it is quite neutral, and because why should there be biases in this? After all, the question is that on the basis of this, what Shefali also said earlier, we have been able to kind of locate exactly the colonies. Like if I go to your own Gurgaon only, we were able to locate the places like village Ghata and some other villages, Wazirabad and others, where you have a lot of concentration of people who are working as domestic servants, who are doing all kinds of daily chores of many of these societies. Now, there the incidence was, if it is higher, then we had to have very special kind of measures for them. And secondly, you see, when the unlockdown started, we started finding that people who are working in the industries, people who are working in the transport sector, they are the ones who are catching the infection faster than others. And similarly, when further these restaurants and everything and hotels started opening, we found that in bigger cities, the people kind of let their guard off and they started having those social gatherings on a much larger scale than was warranted. And that is where a lot of families started getting positive. So I don't think that as far as this data is concerned, there is any kind of a bias in the collection of this data, because it was more of that you are basically finding that this particular data is there, and then you work backwards and see that what does it denote. So the question of biases doesn't come. You are basically starting from the areas where the positive cases are there, and then you are kind of working backwards and see that how they have occurred. So the question of biases doesn't come right in the beginning. Thank you.
Okay, so I think one person who may have faced this somewhat is Mr. Gudisa. Pala Raju, because you were one of the key challenges for you was to contain the the stuff that happened at Jamaat, and then it got different kind of flavors. But did you ever find that there was a neutrality issue, or there was any bias, or did you have to face that as a challenge at all? Mr. Raju, are you there?
Sir, can I also submit something, sir?
Yeah, sure.
Sir, I got an experience working with all states. While I was working in. I just wanted to say that each state is maintaining their own data set, and they're making some analysis based on those data. And there is a lack of cohesion between the states. So that type of issue is always there when a central agency is not maintaining a centralized data and trying to find out what is happening in the states. So maybe this is not the biasing; it is the wrong type of approach where each state is doing the work independently.
Well, thank you very much. There is also a comment from Safdarjung Hospital, and they're saying there is a lot of data available with the doctors working in various settings, right from critical care to outpatient setting, which is likely to throw light on better understanding and management. But that is going to take time to come, as there is very little time for publication. Well, I can completely empathize with that. I mean, you can either fight or you can write. And right now, I think the challenge is to fight.
Can I just give a small comment on what you asked Mr. Raju, since he's not there?
Yeah.
You talked about as far as the Tabligh people are concerned. Now, let us be very clear that as far as Haryana is concerned, we have a very large number of first wave of people who became positive through these Tabligh congregations, right in the entire state. But as far as the health department is concerned, for them, every person who was a Tablighi was a patient, and how that particular patient is to be treated. Whether that person was on a visa which had expired, whether they should be attending those congregations, that was the part of the home and the police department. So the health department, when it comes to a person who's infected, for them it's a patient irrespective of what they have done, and they are to be taken care of as any other patient. I am also holding the additional charge of Additional Chief Secretary Home for the state. So there is a clear distinction between what is the element which requires to be looked into by the investigative agencies and what is the approach which a health department has to take. Health department is extremely neutral when it comes to treating them. Secondly, what Mr. Surinder said about the data being maintained by the states, I think that's a fallacy, because the broad framework of the entire data has been laid by the ICMR and the Government of India also. It's not that we are doing it on our own. So every day, right in the beginning, the ICMR was not doing it. It was primarily the National Communication Diseases which was collecting the data which was sent. But down the line, then the entire thing was streamlined by the Ministry of Health and the ICMR. And largely speaking, the parameters were same for all the states. It's not that they were state-specific parameters. They were all laid down at the central level and not left at the mercy of the states only. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Madan Mohanji, you wanted to say something?
I just wanted to make a small observation with regard to financing. Somehow our focus of various agencies has been how much we have financed. I think that is a good thing. But ultimately, what is happening when you give the money, when you finance? Is he really coming into production? What are his other problems in terms of marketing, in terms of receipt of payments? See, these are all the issues which will bring back your money. So there is need to have a sort of constant type of study or to see that what is happening at ground level.
Well, thank you very much.